first year doing the show, we used to have a show in New Orleans on the West Bank, and it would be for carvers, somewhat for collectors, and have contests and stuff like that. But we wanted to do a show really just for the collectors and the carvers that do strict gunning birds. So we put this together, and after the hurricane.
Years ago, decoys were designed to be hunted over, and most people in the bayou country could not afford to buy decoys from people, so they made their own. And you notice that just about every decoy is similar, but yet it's uniquely different. And the decoy really reflects the carver, the individual carver's his personality, his mindset on how a duck looks in the water, and what he can achieve in his own crude way. Whether it's weight or
I'll make traditional hunting decoys. I hunt with them. Every year I'll make maybe 40 birds over a year's time. 30, all depends how much time I get to put in. They're all done with cypress root or tupelo gum, and they are painted with traditional oil paints. And I use a process that the old carvers used years ago. I'll take and put a brown base coat on here, and I'll come back with a little stick or an edge of a brush or a nail, and I'll scratch, while the paint's still wet, I'll scratch through this brown. And you can see there's a white scratch around here. That's the undercoat underneath this brown. I'll put all these scratches on here, and then I'll let it set after I get all the scratches on here. And then I'll come back with my black, and I'll put that black on there.
This is how you start. This is a piece of cypress root, and you start carving from there. You cut it out on a bandsaw, start whittling from there. And most of them are tupelo. Now, if you take a picture, that mallet on the end is real shiny. That thing, I found a log up in Ormond Plantation up there. It was a sinker cypress. They call it sinker cypress. It's been underwater for a long time. That bird there, they got 540 annual growth rings. So the tree grows annually, one growth ring every year. 500, so that piece of wood is over 540 years old. When Christopher Columbus came over, it was probably growing.
This is a piece of tupelo gum that's native to Louisiana, and a lot of the carvers are using tupelo gum. And this is what we use too. This is cypress root, and it's hard to find now, but it comes from the root of the cypress tree, and it makes a good decoy wood. And it's getting harder and harder to find. But so the majority of the carvers now are using the tupelo gum.
The beauty part about this is now the decoy has evolved from a basic plain Jane bird to a decorative art form, and it's a highly sought after piece of folk art. And some people elevate the birds from a decoy to a wooden sculpture. And believe it or not, right now Louisiana, for years, is the forerunner in wooden decoys. Mostly all of your world champions come from Louisiana.
I'm here with various calls as part of my collection. Some of them I've collected over the course of probably 15 years. Others are calls that are made by some friends of mine, some old-time homemakers in Louisiana. I think for me personally, and I'd say I'd speak for most of the people here, we think back to times when life was a little bit more simple, and the opportunity to enjoy the outdoors was much more available than it is for us today. It's hunting situation is a lot more difficult than it is today than it was years ago, and I think by collecting we feel like we have touchstones to a part of history that we carry or imagine that we carry with us when we're out hunting. Duck calls, they're basically three different types of soundboards. That's the sound producing mechanism in the call. The Louisiana style is represented by which is an early cane call, and it is the combination of two pieces of cane which fit into each other, and this was originally made out of a hard rubber, came from old ace combs, which is a typical reed making material, and this piece called the trough, and this is a wedge block, fits in there, and it adjusts to replicate the sound of a mallard hen. This is relatively early call in what's called the reel foot style. This would have been made originally, that this type of sound block is something that would have been attributed to Tennessee, Reelfoot Lake area. This is different because this is all one piece as opposed to the Louisiana style, which had the two pieces of cane, and it has the reed, which would have been a metal. And generally those were not used in Louisiana calls. We used hard rubber. And this piece called a wedge block fits like this and inserts in this manner. This is called checkering, this technique, which would have been used by a pocket knife for the most part early on. And call makers in the Catahoula Lake area and in the Monroe area would have used this technique in their call making. This was made by a gentleman by the name of Sonny Bigner, who lives on the Catahoula Lake area, and it's constructed in the same manner. It's a style made by someone from the Arkansas area, but it's one that he evolved, and you can see the craftsmanship. He spent a lot of time doing all this by hand out of ebony.
Barber straight razors, and this here is elephant ivory, which is an endangered species right now. But as long as you bought it before the embargo went into effect, you can use it. Elephant ivory and African blackwood, and they make a beautiful knife. You got to have a nice sharp knife to carve with, because if you got a dull knife, you can wind up cutting yourself. They always say you cut yourself with a dull knife, not with a sharp knife.
You've been told since you're young, a lot of people have been told that you're not supposed to cut into you, always away from you. You have more control cutting to you, but if you notice, I'm not doing it wildly, I'm doing it, my wrist is hitting and I got full control of the knife. Now if I was to start doing it like this, then I would be in danger of cutting myself. You know? So every stroke is, I'm in full control of the knife. And it's sharp enough that you can shave with.
When I retired, I started carving. Got interested into it and thought I was going to carve just one, and I decided to carve. Kept on going and going. First thing you know, got a big collection of them.
Good luck with your color.
This is a natural finish cypress. This is a blue-winged teal Tupelo gum. And that's just driftwood from the river. It just relaxes me. I sit down and just forget about all my worries.
Well, my father used to carve old working decoys. That's what this is out here, mostly old working, what they call working decoys. And I started carving that, and I like decorative pieces. Started carving decorative pieces. Decorative, you try to make it as close to the duck, natural duck as you can. And decoys, just all they're going to do is put them out in the pond and call the ducks and shoot over them. So if they get beat up, it don't matter. But you can't make a decorative piece and then expect to hunt with them. You're not going to do it. Plus, you pay twice as much for it. It's a real good hobby. And a lot of these old time carvers are dying off, and it's dying art.
That's Charles Frank's first book on Louisiana decoys, Volume 1. Of course, a lot of these old carvers have died, but some of them that are still around, you know, who still carve decoys, and I'm one of them. 74 years old, that's old enough. It's relaxing, and it's you have the realization that you're doing something that not a lot of people can do, and it's fun to present them to people and sell them. And I also meet a lot of nice people, and I'm a people person, so it just fits my lifestyle.
This little get-together that we have here today is it's really unique in the fact that this is the first time that this has happened. And all of these gentlemen you see here displaying their work, they're all very talented carvers in the room. Most of us can't hunt as much as we used to hunt, but we're still a part of it in our hands because we can create the things in our hands that other people really enjoy looking at.